Well, Mark's work is sensitive enough as to require the severance procedure.
Yeah, it's also, I think, something that's his choice to tell people or not.
No,
Mark, please
no,
forgive
it's
me,
okay.
Mark.
I don't care.
This is a recap of Severance, Season 1. The series opens up with a woman laying on a conference table. She wakes up to the sound of a disemboweled voice wanting to ask her 5 questions. She frantically tries to leave but is locked inside and ultimately agrees to cooperate but can't answer basic questions. She doesn't know her own name or the color of her mother's eyes. But that's okay because Mark enters and says,
That's a perfect score.
We then jump to Mark prior to coming to work. He's depressed, crying. When he enters the job, he swaps out his watch and ID card, and when in the elevator, he has a transformation. He is calmer and can't even remember using the tissue just minutes earlier. He has 2 other co-workers, Dylan and Irving, but the 4th worker, Petey, didn't go to work today. Petey is his best friend, and sadly, his boss Cobell informs Mark that Petey will not be coming back, and that Mark gets a promotion and takes Petey's place, and will be bringing in the new recruit being Helly, the woman we saw in the opening scene. And here we are brought back to Mark asking Helly questions. Helly is not having it, and she throws an object at Mark. She wants to leave, and Mark obliges by showing her the exit. But every time she tries to leave, she keeps returning back. And soon she will learn why, when the boss gives her a tape.
My name is Helly R. I'm making this video to me. I have, of my own free accord, elected to undergo the procedure colloquially known as severance, separating my memories between my work life and my personal life. This alteration is irreversible.
Mark is at Pip's restaurant when Petey joins him. Mark doesn't recognize Petey. The man tells him that they were friends at work, and he remembers both worlds.
Okay, well, severance is pretty permanent.
Yeah, bypassing the implant wasn't easy. I had help.
We're unhappy at work, and instead of lodging a complaint,
No, I tried that first. So did you.
you've unsevered, and now they're after you or something?
Yeah. Nothing down there is what they say.
Petey leaves him an address to go to if he wants more information on what is going on. Mark goes home, and we learn that his neighbor is his boss.
Mark, you're good people.
Those that work are innies, and their counterpart on the outside world are outies. Prior to her severance, Helly tours the Lumen facility with Mr. Milchick, so it appears that Mr. Milchick is not severed. She goes through the severance procedure and we see her side of the door when Innie Helly had tried to exit but kept returning.
Oh no, I'm trying to leave.
No. It's all part of the process. Hey there. Wanna give it another shot? No, Ooh.
Mr. Milchick hosts a welcoming party for Helly where they take a group photo. Helly can't adapt to no time off. She scribbles "I quit" on a sticky to give to her outie, even though Mr. Milchick said it was not possible.
Unfortunately, the elevators are equipped with something called code detectors, so messages can't be passed through.
She takes her chances anyhow. And meet Mr. Grainer. He is about to discipline her when Mark intervenes on her behalf. Mark takes the blame and consequently her punishment. He is sent to the break room instead of Helly. Mark is on a date with Alexa, his sister's midwife, when a man hands out anti-lumen flyers. Mark angrily confronts the man. The date does not end well. Irvin dozes off and sees black goo, and Mr. Milchick sends him to Wellness, where he meets Bert, the O&D department head, in the waiting area. The two share a love of art. Irving's wellness session consisted of hearing good things about his outie, but they control his response.
Your outie can swim gracefully and well. I'm sorry. Please try to enjoy each fact equally. That's 10 points off. You have 90 points remaining.
And you can't tell the other co-workers any of what goes on in that room. Audi Mark takes a day off of work. He claims to be sick. Mr. Milchick, Grainer, and Mrs. Cobell are suspicious. And they should be, because it was just an excuse to meet Petey, who mapped out the floor at Lumen. He hid the original map back at the office. He tells Mark about the break room and has a recording.
I'm afraid you're not sorry. Please. I truly am. I'm sorry. Please read the statement again.
Mark lets Petey hide out at his home. Petey suffers from what he calls reintegration sickness. He coughs up blood and passes out in the shower. Petey is awake. Mark tells him that his neighborhood is fairly empty aside from Mrs. Selvig living next door. Petey suffers from headaches and disorientation. He tells Mark there's a department in Lumen where no one gets to ever leave. Mrs. Selvig spies on Mark through the window.
Are you alright?
After Mark leaves for work, his brother-in-law drops off a copy of his book on Mark's front doorstep. Mrs. Selvig steals the book and goes inside his house to look around, and also steals a candle from Gemma's box. Petey spots her in the house sneaking around, and he sneaks out before she can see him. He wanders outside, and his mind believes that he's in the white hallways of Lumen instead of the streets. Mrs. Selvig / Cobell has Mr. Milchick examine the brother-in-law's book to check for messages. Innie Helly asked to resign and was denied. To help calm Helly down, they all go to the Perpetuity wing of the floor. As the four walk the hallways, they bump into Bert and Felicia, Bert's only co-worker. Irving and Bert pretend to not be drawn to each other, while Dylan is very hostile. He believes the stories that the O&D division is an evil group.
There's seriously a two-person department, like they only ever see each other?
O&D tried a violent coup on the others decades ago, and that's why they reduced them down to 2, and that's why they keep us all so far apart now.
The four spend the day in the Perpetuity Wing, which is a dedication to the Egan family's past CEOs. It also includes a live replica of Keir's estate. Helly tries to send a note to herself using the outside hallway. Alarms go off, chaos ensues, and Mr. Milchick leaves the book behind. Helly cuts her arm and is sent to the mysterious break room.
Forgive me for the harm I have caused this world.
When Innie Mark replaces the new team photos, he finds the map that Petey wrote on the back of one of the photos. Mapping Lumen is forbidden. Audi Mark goes home and Petey is not there. He drives around looking for Petey and follows the sirens to find Petey, who drops to the ground.
I'm afraid you still don't mean it.
Helly is in the break room repeating the same paragraph over and over again until Mr. Milchick believes she is sorry. The end of day comes and he tells her to return in the morning.
See you tomorrow, Helly.
Forgive me for the harm I've caused this world.
Audi Mark finds Petey's cell phone ringing in his house, while Innie Mark studies Petey's map in secret. Bert enters their workspace. Dylan doesn't want him here. Bert gives them pre-released handbook totes and invites them to tour his office. Helly returns. After 1,072 repetitions, she's burnt out. She talks to Dylan about the break room.
What about the voice behind the door?
Crying baby, you mean?
No, like the angry mumbly guy.
Mark says they're not supposed to talk about it. Helly finds the map in Mark's drawer. He grabs it from her and shreds it in protest. Irving visits Bert. Bert makes a move on Irving, who panics and rushes out. And as he heads back, he finds the book. He informs Dylan and Mark. The book is dedicated to Mark. Helly makes another move. Threatens to chop off her fingers unless she can tape a resignation to her Audi. They comply. Tape in hand, she enters the elevator. Returns with a new tape. She listens to a tape from her Audi.
I am a person. You are not. I make the decisions. You do not.
Petey has died. Mark goes to his funeral and sees Mrs. Selvig there. She is suspicious about why Audi Mark would know Petey, but is too preoccupied with the task of sneaking to the casket and removing the severance chip from Petey's brain. Audi Mark drives to a tree on the side of the road. It appears to be where his wife died. On the other hand, Innie Mark begins to read the book, specifically this part.
Your job needs you, not the other way around.
Cobell orders a diagnostic on Petey's chip and also orders a wellness session for Mark. Miss Casey lights the candle that was stolen from Gemma's box in Mark's house. She has Mark sculpt his feelings out of clay. He sculpts a tree. Cobell is watching through the camera and is disturbed by the tree. Dylan sneaks a peek at the book. Irving goes back to visit, but Bert isn't there. He opens the door in the back of the room and finds a large office with several people. He and his co-workers were led to believe that Bert only worked with one other person. When Helly leaves, she grabs the rope and hangs herself in the elevator. Mark was able to get there in time to rescue Helly from the elevator. She's in the hospital, but she will return. Stressed out, Mark gets the book he has hidden in his filing cabinet.
Should you find yourself contorting to fit a system, stop and ask if it's truly you that must change, or the system.
Graina tells Cobell that Petey's chip shows his memory was reintegrated. She wants him to find out who did it before delivering the information to the board. Mark rushes to the birthing cottage where his sister is about to give birth. His brother-in-law is annoyed with him because he hasn't called to thank him for the book that he left him. That was about 5 days ago. Mark says he never got the book and it was probably stolen. His sister goes for a walk and meets a pregnant woman in the fancy lodge next door. Her name is Gabby, and it's her third child, which she says she's going to name William. In the morning, Mark's sister gives birth to a baby girl with the help of a midwife whose name is Alexa. Helly returns to the office, and Miss Casey is tasked with watching Helly's every move to make sure she won't hurt herself. Irving is having another episode of seeing the black goo dripping all over the place. He tells Mark that he needs to seek Bert's counsel, and Mark agrees, but first he wants a copy of the map to O&D in case something happens to him and he has to go looking for him. But as Irving is at the copy machine, artwork is coming out.
Oh, I'm sorry, Irving. We must have sent this print job here by mistake. You weren't supposed to see this. It's the O&D coup, isn't it?
Irving shows it to Dylan. The aggressors in the image, the ones who started the war and doing all the killing, wore O&D badges and are attacking another department. It's just like Dylan had said.
You ran a 266 on Irving B?
I thought it might dissuade him from spending so much time with Bert G.
Casey needs to step out of the office for a few minutes, and she wants Helly to go with her because she can't leave Helly's sight. But Mark says he will watch Helly, but when Miss Casey leaves, he sneaks off with Helly. He wanted time with her alone because he wanted to ask her for help to redraw Petey's map, the one that he had shredded the other day. He only remembers part of it and he can't finish the map. She said she won't help him and she leaves in a huff. He follows her and they get lost. Then they see a baby goat. They follow it into a room where a man feeds the goats.
You can't take them yet, they're not ready.
As they try and find their way back, Helly agrees to help Mark redraw the map. Casey has found them and they head back with Cobell watching on a screen.
You're not stopping it.
The surest way to tame a prisoner is to let him believe he's free.
There's a cure quote for everything. How many more departments are you going to let them find?
I'll have a word with Mark.
Irving finds Bert in the conference room. Dylan shows up and is worried that Bert is going to murder Irving. And since Helly and Mark still haven't returned, Dylan thinks Bert already killed them. And as he listens to them speak, he now suspects that Irving and Bert have a thing for each other. But on the other hand, Bert is scared of their department as well because he heard stories of his own about the MDR group. They all agree to go to O&D and sort it all out. Once at O&D, Dylan finds a near replica of the painting him and Irving saw earlier at the photocopy machine. But this one is different.
Look at the badges the raiders are wearing. It's not O&D, Dylan. It's us.
Why the hell would there be two versions of the same painting?
Bert then introduces them to his department. Graina calls Cobell and informs her that the reintegration on Petey's chip is traced to Ragabi. Mark throws away Petey's phone. His sister Devin takes the baby for a walk and she spots Gabby, the woman she had coffee with when they were both pregnant. But the woman doesn't seem to recognize her. Devin remembers that she was going to name the kid William and mentioned the name.
His name's Bradley, actually.
Not William?
Later on in the evening, she does an internet search on this woman. She found out that her husband is actually a senator and he is a defender of Lumen. He sees Severance as a benefit to society. Mark is reading the chapter of the book on camaraderie. The group meet and Irving wants to visit O&D and unite the departments. Dylan doesn't want to go, but Helly does. Mark, on the other hand, is not so sure, but the way that he smiles at Helly makes Dylan think that Mark likes her. Cobell informs Mark that Casey is in the break room for losing track of Helly. Mark is not happy about this because he was the one who took Helly for a walk, and he says that he should be the one in the break room instead, not Miss Casey. The conversation doesn't go well, and Mark dares to ask,
What is it we actually do here?
We serve here, you child!
She revokes their hallway privileges. Mark tells the team that there's no more interdepartmental visits, and Irving thinks it's his fault, that he's responsible for this. And Mark responds with,
Which way'd you say it was to O&D?
And there they go.
Milchick!
I'm on it.
They enter O&D and the groups ask each other questions, and it's clear that no one knows what their job really is. Mark says they are trying to piece it all together. Dylan looks around. He spots some cars in a bin. And then there's someone at the door, and it opens, and it's Mr. Milchick. Dylan slips a card in his pocket, and then the group is forced to leave O&D. Mark is ordered to the break room. When entering, he sees Casey leaving.
I'm sorry.
Cobell/Mrs. Selvig goes to Devin's house, applying for a job to care for the baby. Later, Grainer visits her. He believes that Ragabi is the person who reintegrated Petey, and that she is currently hiding out in a school campus.
Dylan.
Innie Dylan wakes up in an unfamiliar territory. He's in Audi Dylan's closet. He's confused. Mr. Milchick wants to know where he put the ideographic card he swiped from O&D. Dylan told Milchick that he put it in the bathroom, and as he's answering, a little kid rushes in yelling, "Daddy, Daddy," and then runs to him and hugs him.
We told you to count to 1,000 and wait outside.
Is that my kid?
End it.
Mark is on a second date with Alexa. They watch a band because Petey's daughter plays for that band. One of the songs curses out Lumen. Mark fervently sings along. It's a good night and the date went well, but he can't sleep and rushes to the garbage bin and removes Petey's phone, the one that he threw away earlier. It rings and he answers it, agreeing to meet the woman at a college campus right now. And he goes there and he meets this woman. She tells Mark that she put the chip in his head and she also reintegrated Petey, and that Petey would still be alive if he had followed her post-op instructions. She's the only one who can deactivate the chip, but then suddenly Grainer walks in and she kills him with a bat. At this point, it's a foregone conclusion that she is Ragabi. Mark is about to puke when she reminds him about not leaving his DNA behind.
Grainer's security card. Full access, and it can't be tied to anyone. Take it to work tomorrow. He'll know what to do.
Who'll know what to do?
You.
He runs outside and pukes. He rushes home and stuffs the clothes he was wearing into a garbage bag when Alexa walks into the kitchen. She wants to know where he was for the past hour. She heard his car outside. He can't tell her what happened, and she leaves, upset. In the morning, he throws out the clothes when Mrs. Selvig sees him. Mr. Milchick is having a busy morning. He tests the new doors to make sure they're operational. He locates the ideographic card that Dylan snatched and returns it to Bert.
Ah, the missing 7199G. Oswald will be so delighted. I too am delighted.
Oh, good.
Then greets Dylan by the elevator. Dylan is agitated about the closet incident. Milchick tells him that what happened yesterday was called the overtime contingency.
It's a safeguard we occasionally employ to remotely awaken workers off-site.
Dylan wants to know his son's name, but Milchick refuses to tell him. Audi Mark takes the car to work. Milchick greets any Mark to escort him to the office. It is now locked, no entrance or exit from the office without a proper key card. Milchick is alone there. He can't find Grainer and Cobell won't answer her phone. That's because she is busy with Mark's sister and her baby. Milchick throws a party celebrating Helly reaching 75% even though she's at 73%. The prize, a 5-minute dance break. Milchick proceeds to groove. Mark realizes he has an illegal badge in his pocket. Milchick doesn't notice and tries to get Dylan to dance. Dylan is the one who enjoys the office perks more than anyone else, but not today. Instead, he attacks Milchick. Dylan yells at Milchick to tell him his name, meaning his son's name. He bit Milchick. Dylan tells his coworkers everything. Helly suggests that they use this device to wake themselves up. But how can they access the device? They can't even leave their room now. Mark shows them the security office key from his pocket. They know it belongs to Grainer. Time for a walk. The card works. Irving leaves them to check on Bert. Mark and Helly go to the security office. Mark knows where it is because Petey had told him. They find the panel with their names on it. Cobell is on the monitor. She just arrived at work. They have to get back to the office. Helly rips a page from the instruction manual. They show Dylan. They can work the device, but there's a catch.
But to do this, one of us has to stay behind.
Dylan says he'll stay. Cobell learns that Grainer is dead. After yesterday, Irving is worried that Bert is being punished. When he goes to O&D, he sees a party. It's a retirement party. They clap and cheer for Bert. But Irving knows that retirement is death for them. When the Audi retires, the innie dies. He lashes out at Milchick, who isn't severed. Milchick is having a bad day.
I don't know what's gotten into you people today.
Irving says goodbye to Bert. He knows this is the last time he'll ever see him again. When Irving returns, his co-workers study him. Irving is the one that follows the rules and with the highest regard for the company and its founders.
Let's burn this place to the ground.
The final shot is Mark staring at a photo of his deceased wife, Gemma. It's Casey, the wellness counselor. He loved things about his wife equally.
Please try to enjoy each fact equally.
We are introduced to Irving's Audi. He owns a dog. He's an artist who repeatedly paints this image using black paint reminiscent of the black goo Innie Irving hallucinates about. Meanwhile, the office has been on pins and needles as they wait for Helly to reach 100% by end of day in order for the department to reach their quarterly quota. She succeeds and everyone is happy, including Cobell. Mark can only select one person to get the waffle prize that occurs after working hours. Mark chooses Dylan. That's because that is part of their plan for the innies to awaken above. Cobell sends Mark to the wellness center. He notices that the room is sparse. That's because she was just told that she is retiring. Casey is being replaced. And now he feels really guilty. She tells him that her favorite time was the 8 hours spent in his department watching Helly. It was the longest she'd ever been awake. Cobell and Milchick watch them on the screen. He says that it's good that they don't remember each other because it means the chip works.
Take her back down to the testing floor, please.
And he does. Casey asks if her Audi is happy up there.
Of course. You do all sorts of wonderful things.
Irving's paintings look just like the hallway leading to the testing floor. Milchick hosts a party celebrating them reaching their quota. The four prep. They give Dylan the key card and instructions on how to activate the overtime contingency. And then they all say their goodbyes. And Helly and Mark kiss for the first time. The board found out that Helly tried to kill herself and that Cobell has been spending time with Mark's family. And so they fired Cobell. And Milchick was the one who escorted her out. Milchick takes Dylan to the Egan State replica. His waffles await him. And then there's a sort of eyes wide shut thing that starts, but he sneaks out and into the security room where he immediately ties the door shut using his belt. On the outside, Irving paints. Helly is at a fancy party and Mark is at his sister's house. His brother-in-law is having a reading for the book his innie is reading. Mrs. Selvig arrives. Mark tells Mrs. Selvig that he wants to leave Lumen.
Do it. away from them, Mom.
When at that moment, Dylan stretches out and is able to turn both switches and hold them to activate the overtime contingency. When they wake up, Mark is in the middle of a conversation with Cobell/Selvig. Helly is at a black tie event. Her last name is Egan, the famous surname of the company's CEOs. And Irving is painting. He scans the room and sees the same artwork over and over again. They don't know how much time Dylan can give them, but their goal is to find someone to expose the truth to. Irving is alone except for his dog. The name on the collar is Radar.
Your Audi likes the sound of radar.
In the closet, he finds a trunk. From the articles, his Audi is anti-lumen. Severed workers sue for information following injury. Then further down he reads, Lumen needs to be held accountable. His Audi collected a list of severed people. His name is on the list, and so is Bert's. His Audi mapped out all their homes. It's time for a drive. Irvin locates Bert's home. Through the window, he watches a happy Bert with his male companion. Irving, on the other hand, is devastated. Gabby introduces her senator husband to Helly. She infers that she used Severance to have her 3 babies. Everywhere Helly looks, images of her work life at Lumen are on display, along with her co-workers. There's a video of her Audi explaining why she did the procedure.
But I took a separate job because it sounds freaking awesome.
And then she meets James Egan, the current CEO, the man whose display is front and center in the Perpetuity wing. She learns that he is her father. There are quite a few people attending Rickon's book reading, but even with all those people, Mark manages to figure out that he has a sister and who she is, and that Rickon is his brother-in-law. During the break, he tells Rickon that the book changed his life, and Rickon mentions Gemma's passing. Mark wants to see a photo of her, but they are interrupted. He hurries to meet Devon when Mrs. Cobell appears. He makes an excuse to get away from her when he unknowingly makes a mistake.
I'm on uncle duty for my sister, so I'll be right back. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Miss Cobell.
Mark is finally able to tell Devon who he is, and she explains about Gemma's death and why her brother did the procedure. Mark asks why Mrs. Cobell is there. Devon doesn't know Mrs. Cobell, but the description Mark gives sounds a lot like Mrs. Selvig.
Mark, are you talking about Mrs. Selvig?
Maybe, but her name is Harmony Cobell.
And she works at Lumen?
Yeah, she's my boss.
Mrs. Cobell knows that the innies are awake. She speeds down the street and frantically calls Mr. Milchick.
They told me not to talk to you.
OTC's been triggered. Mark S is its idiot. Get to the security office and shut it off now.
Mr. Milchick tries to bribe Dylan with perks, but Dylan isn't interested.
I want to remember my kid being born!
Mr. Milchick tells him he has 2 other children, and he will tell Dylan their names if he opens the door. Dylan stands his ground. Irving can't let Bert go. He walks to Bert's door and pounds on it. Cobell arrives just as Helly is about to take the stage.
Is it you? I'm gonna kill your company.
She is pulled away to make her speech. Her father watches from the back. She tells the audience she's an innie and they are all being tortured down there. Mark picks up the wedding photo of his Audi and is stunned to learn that Gemma is Miss Casey. In the final scene of season 1, Milchick cuts the belt.
Damn it! Please! We're prisoners! She's alive!
This concludes the recap of season 1 of Severance. Thank you for watching.